Where do we draft Saquon Barkley heading into 2021 redraft and dynasty? Does he have equal value in both formats? How much risk do we have to bake into his value to make sure we're covered in case he has a slow start in 2021? Will he even be healthy heading into 2021? We're going to break all that down and more. The Fantasy Football Show begins now.
This is the Fantasy Football Show with your host, Smitty.
Top 5 running back. You're watching the Fantasy Football Show. I'm Smitty. Take a lap. Saquon Barkley. Let's talk about Saquon Barkley for the next 10 to 15 minutes. Now, I'm doing this new series where I'm breaking down one player at a time. Based on the comments below, you guys tell me who you want next. Many of you asked me a question, and it's a great question. Why didn't Saquon Barkley rank in my top 5 or 6 when I did my running back rankings, when I was slotting JonathanTaylor at like 6 to 8? I think we could all say that Kamara kind of belongs right here. We can talk about Taysom Hill, what happens at quarterback there, but he's going to go in the top 5. We can throw him in there. Now it's Adams. I mean, who doesn't take Adams in the top 5? You could even swap these two if you wanted. This is it. What are we doing here? We're not going anybody like maybe Tyreek Hill. But past that, who are you gonna go besides JonathanTaylor? You could consider James Robinson, but I'm not taking him that early. And the answer is he does belong in that 6 to 8 range for me. In fact, I still have the mock draft up that we were doing on the last video, on the JonathanTaylor video. I mentioned J-Rob and a couple other players, but I didn't mention Saquon's name. Now, Saquon does belong in this range, and I probably would put him right in this 6 to 8. So while I didn't mention him as one of the running backs, I only really mentioned J-Rob's name. It is J-Rob. It is Saquon. These are the running backs that we're considering with Taylor once we no longer have Cook, Kamara, Henry, or Christian McCaffrey on the board. The only other running backs that are worth mentioning right here at this value range would be maybe Nick Chubb. You could talk about Nick Chubb right here. I don't think Eckler should go anywhere in the first round. I think Eckler could be actually an avoid for me in 2021, and I'll break that down in the Eckler video. Zeke deserves to be in the conversation here. I'm not saying I'd put Zeke at 6. I probably would draft Taylor over Elliott in 2021. I probably would draft Taylor over J-Rob in 2021, and I most definitely would draft Taylor over Chubb in 2021. I'm going to do videos on every single name that I just mentioned. So if you're like, Smitty, wait a minute.
What do you mean, Chubb?
What do you mean you don't draft Chubb at 6 to 8? I'm going to go over that. Don't you worry. Chubb's got a video coming. J-Rob's got a video coming. Clyde Edwards-Helaire. The whole lot of the top 25 will all have a video, don't worry. But Barkley is deserving right in this 6 to 8 range. Make no mistake about it. James Robinson is probably a little safer. Zeke Elliott, you could say, is safer, but I would argue that Zeke has the same kind of risk level as Saquon. He just has different risks in different categories. So let's finish this mock out. Let's even say we put Tyreek Hill at number 6. So we'll go Hill at 6. We'll go Taylor at 7. 8, we put Quan. 9, we go J-Rob. 10, we go Elliott. And 11 through like 14, you could argue MT. You could argue DK Metcalf. You could argue Stephon Diggs. Ridley, again, Chubb. DeAndre Hopkins. Where's Hopkins go? Hopkins has to be considered in this 11 to 14, not just like 14. Hopkins is 11 to 14, but definitely Ridley as well. Definitely Diggs, definitely MT, definitely DK, all these guys. That's why I love the like 11 to 18 overall range, because from 11 to 18, you're looking at getting, let's say you were to trade down into the second round, you were to trade your 3rd, 4th, and 5th rounders up somehow, you're looking at accumulating a bunch of like Elliott, MT, Jefferson, Hopkins. Accumulate 4 or 5 of those guys. I love the trade down from the first round and the trade up into the second round, and accumulating 4 or 5 of these second round guys, giving up a bunch of your depth to make this happen. But I love the approach in 2021, and I've got a video on it I'll put in the description. But back on point with Saquon, I truly believe that Saquon could have a bounce back year, kind of to the same tune that AP did his recovery year when AP came back and broke the rushing record, rushed for over 2,000 yards the year after he tore his ACL. AP, Adrian Peterson, for you youngins out there, AP and Quan have something very much in common. They're super human beings. They both have lower body strength that's unmatched in the NFL. Their ability to heal quickly. And Saquon, I've talked about this a lot, but Saquon Barkley tore his ACL, if you didn't know. And one reason I've talked about this a lot, one reason I love Saquon's potential fast recovery, because of his lower body strength. Let's pretend this is your knee for a second. The ACL keeps that knee joint tight so that it doesn't move around. If you were to tear your ACL, then your knee joint's kind of like this and it moves around. You have your LCL on the outside, you have your MCL on the other side. The PCL is still in the middle as well. But your knee without an ACL could slowly grind away the cartilage that is like a spacer in between your two knee joints. Think of it like this. Here's your meniscus in between your knee, and you have no ACL to keep it tight. Well, you're slowly going to just grind that meniscus down. Now, the advantage a guy like Saquon Barkley has in terms of recovery, getting over an ACL tear and the rehab involved, is that he has such strong legs that the atrophy won't be there like it would be for some other people. The surrounding muscles around the knee are so strong that his knee is tight to begin with. I told this story about Garrison Hurst a couple times on the show, but college running back prospect, going to be a first rounder. They found out in the combine testing that he didn't have an ACL. This is many, many years ago. He had such strong muscles wrapping around his knee and his thigh strength that he literally wasn't even using his ACL because his knee was tighter than his ACL could have ever made it. And while in time, if he lessened the thigh strength, he wouldn't have as tight of a knee and he would slowly, like a normal human being, grind down cartilage. But at the time of the NFL draft, when he was a rookie, his knee was as tight as can be. He had to get the ACL surgery because teams didn't know what to make of ACLs. They were scared to death of them. So he forced himself to damage his knee in terms of getting an ACL repair, going through the rehab, the atrophy, all for nothing because his knee was so tight. Now, when you tear your ACL, you have to remove it. It's like a floppy rubber band if it's still connected at one side and flopping around. And that causes damage, swelling. It's not like they could just take Saquon's ACL out and he'd be completely fine to run out onto the field. There's still recovery involved. So replacing it is a good idea. But my point here is that Saquon Barkley's knee from the jump of having surgery is tighter and more efficient. There are stronger muscles wrapping around the knee that a normal human being doesn't even have, and the thigh strength is so key to a stable knee. Saquon Barkley could cruise through his rehab. I predict we see reports start to surface in a couple months where it's like, Saquon's way ahead of schedule. Saquon, look at him cutting. Look at the video of Saquon Barkley cutting. He looks as fast as ever. And then we're going to see Saquon Barkley, who is ranking in right around here, start climbing up. And then you will see people starting to take him at 4 and 5. Some people might even take him over Kamara, and that sounds funny right now. But just wait till the hype builds back up. Right now in Dynasty, you'd be very, very smart to go trade for Saquon Barkley on the cheap. The cheap being people don't see him rehabbing yet. They aren't looking at the hype yet. The hype train's coming. Unless he suffers some kind of setback, which is why we want to package in risk, because you can never know what's going on inside the knee. You could be as strong as can be, but you could have some kind of swelling or need to go in for a second repair. There are complications that can happen, and that's why you do package in the risk. That's why you don't hear me saying, Saquon Barkley, take him number 5, take him over JT. That's why a lot of you said, where's Saquon? Why didn't you mention Saquon? I'm baking in the risk. I think you should too. Baking it in meaning 7, 8 overall. That's baked in risk while still respecting the dude and ranking him appropriately. But you don't want to rank him higher than 7 or 8 right now because you don't have to. Now, if the hype train starts to build, he looks great, and he does climb naturally into the 5 or 6 overall range, I'll pay it. Not in every league. I don't recommend anybody put all their eggs in one basket for any player. That could ruin your season if Saquon does have some kind of unforeseen setback. All your leagues are, done because you banked on one guy and a freak injury happened or a weird internal infection occurred. That can happen. There have been players that have had ACL tears, surgeries, and they never get back on the field, or that entire year they're recovering and they're supposed to come back. They don't ever make it on the field because of an infection and some kind of crazy thing that happened internally. You can avoid that, but the odds are not great that will happen. And Saquon Barkley's thigh strength and surrounding muscles around the knee are so strong. I think his rehab progress and speed and recovery overall will be one for the record books. It'll be like AP's return. And there's no player in the NFL that has stronger lower body strength than Saquon Barkley. If anybody can bounce back, literally If anybody could bounce back and literally look 100% healthy, less than 1 year removed from an ACL tear, it would be Saquon Barkley. But I urge you, continue to take advantage of his 7 to 10 overall ADP for as long as you can. Own him in at least one league in 2020, not all of them, not even half of your leagues. Own him in a couple leagues, at least one, because you will want to be along for the comeback ride. It's going to be a wild one. Saquon Barkley, you have just been Smitty approved inside the top 8 to 10 overall heading into 2021 redraft or dynasty. One quick note, just looking at his game log from a dynasty perspective, like, hey, how do we treat him in dynasty versus redraft? I think it's the same. I think you draft him at 6, 7, 8 overall. Maybe in dynasty, you draft him at 7, 8, 9, 10 in a redraft. And the reason I'm still very, very excited about his future is because he's really only played 2 NFL seasons, 1,000 yards, barely in 2019. Now, he did miss 3 games. That's a concern, a red flag, if you will. Torn ACL, missed 3 games the year prior. But I think the ACL and that missed time, they don't correlate, and I'm not going to hold that against him. If he has another injury-riddled year, then I'm probably going to start taking notice and factoring into his 2022 value. But for right now, I'm looking at a game log that says, hey, I played 16 games as a rookie, ran for 1,311 touchdowns. I was underutilized in 2019. I've still got brand new tread on my tires, and I'm 23, turning 24, heading into 2021. Only 261 carries as a rookie, only 217 carries in his second year, 19 carries last year. Low mileage. Big hands, big energy. Now go Saquon shopping in your Dynasty League and drop what name you want me to talk about next, because this new series I focus on one player, and I'm going to go through pretty much a grip of the top 25, 30, 40 overall players. I don't know how far I'm going to get. You've been watching the Saquon Barkley breakdown. What player do you want next? Get on over to sleeperu.com. Get your fantasy football news from me. Every single piece of news that I write has a redraft and dynasty spin. It's all sortable based on rookies, mock drafts. Do you want 2021 outlooks? Do you want news? Do you want injuries? The best Newswire I think you're going to ever find on the web. I'm going to be your new fantasy football news source. Check me out at sleeperu.com. sleeperu.com. And don't forget to order a phone call from me. Cook up trade ideas at heysmitty.com. Subscribe, follow, tell your friends, tell everybody, tell your
grandmother.
Herbert is the GOAT. He'll punch you in the throat. Herbert is the GOAT. He'll punch you in the throat. Herbert is the GOAT. He'll punch you in the throat. Herbert is the GOAT. He'll punch you in the throat. Herbert is the GOAT. He'll punch you in the throat. Herbert is the GOAT. He'll punch you in the throat. Herbert is the GOAT. He'll punch you in the throat.